So, in our last week's podcast, we had a really interesting conversation, didn't we? The title being...
Don't we always?
Who do you work for? So this was more of a very business-oriented, kind of entrepreneurial kind of a discussion relating to business, entrepreneurs, working in different ways, and trying to really establish who do we actually work for, and whether that's ourselves or whether it's an employee or contractors or your clients. It was a very fascinating conversation we ended up having with Safra Ali. For those of you who missed it, you can go and look back at that. This week, we decided to follow that conversation up with not who do you work for, but what do you work for? And again, this week we have another special guest who will be joining us all the way from Derby. all the way from Derby, very far from where we are. And we will be having a conversation. And usually myself and this guest of ours, for those of you who don't know, is Kul Mahay. We end up having an annual meeting. And at the end of the meeting, we always end up saying, gosh, we should have recorded this. There's so much to be shared from our conversation. And today, here we are. We'll have that conversation with you guys as the guest straight after this. Right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Beardos Media. And tonight we have another special guest joining us on the topic of what do you work for? Ali, what do you work for?
Peanuts.
You're a bit of a monkey,
a little bit too literal there.
Go on then, expand.
That's it, it's just
scatter the peanuts.
Yes, peanuts. What do you work for? What do we work for?
What do you work for? Now, this is going to be a very interesting conversation because I can't answer this as a one-liner. I work for this.
Yeah,
and I'll explain that in a bit more detail, and hopefully we'll.
Because in order to answer it, you've got to understand the question, and the question isn't just. It's not monetary, is it? People will say, "Well, I work for money, or I work for this, or I work for that." The question is deeper than that, isn't it?
It's a lot deeper than that, and. You know what? To answer this question, you have to look at things in all sorts of different ways. You have to look at the question itself, as you mentioned, and in that question, you've got to define what is it that you're working for. Is it going to be something that's tangible? Is it going to be something that's emotional? Is it something that's going to be spiritual? Is it going to be theological? You know, and when we're answering the question, then we've got to think about what do we mean by work? What is work? Yeah, it's for me, it's not as simple and straightforward as saying I work for this or I work for that or I work for my kids or my family and stuff like that. It's obviously we do that as well, but the whole
it's more than what do you go to work for, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. See, this is the difference in it. It's all in the wording.
That's a very good point. It's a massive difference between the two. And you know what? When we talk about work, most people do often just refer to where we go to earn some money, or what we do to earn some money. And we had this conversation last week with Saf about who do you work for, whether you feel you work for yourself or whether you feel you work for your employees at times, you know. And the who and the what can be sometimes intertwined in all sorts of different ways. But when we ask the question, what do you actually work for? I suppose we should even be asking the question, what we work for, is it the same as what we think we should be working for?
Okay.
Do you see what I mean?
I think, to be fair, it's such a question which is going to make people sit back and wonder what the answer is.
Yeah.
It's not one of those where everybody can answer you straight away. It's, it's like asking somebody the purpose of life.
Yeah.
Even though you're living and even though you're doing life on a daily basis, you're not ready for that question. It's not something at the forefront of your mind.
Yeah.
It's not, is it?
It's not.
Strange that.
Yes.
Because how can what you're actually physically doing and living not be at the forefront?
It's almost like the question, or not even the question, the notion of death.
Yeah.
It's the only certainty all human beings have, all living creatures have.
Yeah.
Yet it's the one subject which rarely people want to even talk about. They want to, it's one of them, isn't it? So when we ask the question, what do you work for? What comes into people's mind? So I think in order to help us kind of expand on this discussion and delve into some deeper thoughts, we're going to bring in our guest for today. And our guest is somebody who is a good friend, somebody who I've actually watched do some amazing things in all sorts of different arenas, as a public speaker, as somebody who trains up public speakers, as an author, as a coach for senior leaders. He has his own events. He's been dubbed by the media as the Asian Tony Robbins, but with Bhangra. He does all sorts of stuff and all sorts of in all sorts of immersive ways, and that's something that I've kind of known him as, the immersion coach, because he really immerses himself into that person's life and helps them develop and gets them to immerse into their own lives as well. So hopefully this is going to be
no pressure there.
No pressure at all. So without further ado, welcome to Beardos Media, Kul Mahay in the house.
Hey guys.
How are you, Kul?
Do you know what? I was listening to you two talk and trying to describe and understand what this question is, and I almost thought, I think I'll go home because this is deep.
Brilliant. It is deep, isn't it?
I think you sort of nailed it there. It's almost like asking ourselves, what is life all about, or what is the meaning of life? It's this bigger question, something that we're doing automatically every single day of our lives, and yet we haven't taken that time to truly sit down, reflect and think as to why we're doing it or what this actually is.
Absolutely, 100%.
So like you're talking about, well, what do you work for? And I think the key word there is a 4-letter word, work. What is work? Is work going to a place of employment, or going to a place where you provide voluntary services, or a place where you are active in some way? Is that work? Because that's, from the moment that we're born and we're able to, understand language and those people around us, at that point, we are taught and conditioned to believe that that is what work is. Work is where you exude some energy to get something in return for that energy that you've given. And it's a necessity in life. So
it really is, it's true.
By then the question is very simple. But actually, is work that, or is it more than that? And for me, I think from the moment that we're able to do so, we're practically working every single day of our lives, or we should be, if we're leading intentional lives.
Yes.
That's the phrase that I live my life by.
Intentional lives. Wow, I like that.
I have a book up here somewhere above my head called Intentional Living by a guy called John C. Maxwell, who is one of my mentors, and he's like a world authority on leadership. And he very often says that if you don't get out of bed and then be very conscious as to every single action that you take throughout your entire day, and make sure that that action that you're taking is in alignment with the goal that you have, the eventual goal that you have for your life, then actually you're wasting a lot of energy. And it's so true for so many of us, isn't it? We live in a very hypnotic kind of way. Many of us are in this matrix kind of way of thinking, where we think that we are actually taking responsibility for our own life, but actually we're not. We're living in this way that's being expected of us. So we're according with the way people expect us to behave and do things, and the way that we work, the way that we dress, the way that we drive, etc., etc., etc. And half the time, we can't even remember the life journeys that we've been on.
Very interesting. Yes, absolutely, absolutely, and it's true. And we've got people making comments about working for money. Omar says we work. In seriousness, we want to earn money, earning money to turn the wheel of life, as we're born into a system which doesn't run without money. And that's one way of working, and one way of looking at how we work. And Shireen mentioned something similar. When you enjoy what you do, you never work a day. But I think the question, when we delve deep into the discussion, goes more into the intentions, doesn't it? And you mentioned something key here, which was to do with our intentional lives. And I was thinking about this earlier. And if I were to answer the question, what do you work for? I think for me, it always comes down to intentions, doesn't it? Whatever we class as work, whether it's charitable work, whether it's doing stuff at home, whether it's something like even cooking at home, whether it's working in your day job, with what intentions do we carry out that task will determine what we're actually doing it for.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. And the question then unfolds into what should be the intention. And I think that's where most of us, if anything, would probably stop. We won't even delve so deep into that conversation or think about, well, with what intention should I do this? With what intention should I do that? I think
it probably there's another step beyond that. I think you're absolutely right. Intentional living and having intentions in your life are critical to having a conscious life. But beyond the intentions, those intentions have to take us somewhere. So I think where most of us fail is that we don't set ourselves goals. We don't have a vision for our lives. So what's the vision for our lives? Now, I can tell you what my vision is. And we very often we have people saying all the time, create vision boards for yourselves so that you can visibly remind yourself of the goals that you want to aspire towards in life. And let's be honest, we won't have just one goal. The goal won't be just to be a millionaire or to have a 6-bedroom house or to drive the fancy BMW. You will have a series of goals.
He said fancy.
Come on, man. That's not that bad. Is it cool?
I mean, it's a BMW, so that's
It's pretty fancy, right? It's pretty fancy.
Yeah. Sorry, carry on.
Your BMW isn't everything, though, is it? If you didn't have the BMW, your life wouldn't stop.
No.
It makes you feel good in a certain way because you're driving that BMW. As I like my car, and I'm driving my car. But you need other goals as well. You need a monetary goal because, as Omar quite rightly says, money does make the world go round. You can't survive in the world, and people might argue with me. You can't survive in the world without money. You need to have money to exist and to thrive. But you also need more than that. You need health. You need good relationships around you. You need love. You need security. Abraham Maslow, over 100 years ago, talked about the 5 specific needs that humans have.
The hierarchy of needs.
Hierarchy of needs. He talked about everyone needs food and water. Everyone needs shelter and security. But then people also need to feel that they belong to a society. People also need to feel that they are recognized in society. That they have the camaraderie or the relationships around, or those romantic relationships, call them what you will, or to be a part of a community, and then also to be recognized within that community so they fit into that community. And ultimately, when they have all of that, that's when they have the self-realization. That's when they go and do something bigger, maybe find spirituality, to define themselves at a deeper level, or to get into charity work, or to have that midlife crisis and buy a big BMW.
Nice
Thanks.
done. I like
Thanks.
Or to have really cool beards,
Well played. Well played.
He's on fire tonight.
I like this guy.
Ignite your inner potential. He's ignited us is already.
Kul is one of us now. He's going to be on every week.
Don't you think it is so true? Every human being,
Yeah.
journey, every single human being.
Yeah, definitely.
No human being. If there is a human being, if I ever come across a human being who tells me that I have a goal, and my goal is to get to a threshold of X amount of money, and then that will make me happy. I have to stand back and really reflect on whether this human being, this person, has thought deeply enough about life. Because that for me is what I call finite thinking. Finite thinking is that you have a very linear kind of thinking, and you create a winning post inside your own mind, and that you define success by that. But when you get to that winning post, then what? You've got all those years ahead of you to live, but if you've already achieved everything that you want to achieve, then what? Then going goes downhill, and you start becoming unhappy by your own very definition.
Yeah.
Really.
Interesting. I actually had this discussion with a friend of mine called Winston Ben Clements. You might have seen a couple of interviews I did with him a few years ago. We might actually bring him on to one of these shows one day. And I asked Winston, how does one find their purpose? Because it's what you mentioned, isn't it? When you've achieved everything materialistically, what then? Why do people then become unhappy? And you see a lot of celebrities becoming, very sad and depressed and suicidal thoughts, and even though materialistically, they'll have everything you think you'd ever want. And Winston answered the question. He says, imagine, Majid, if you had achieved everything. Imagine you won the lottery and you had all the money in the world that you ever wanted. You were never short of anything financially. Materialistically, you had everything. Yeah. Then what would you do? That's how you look for your purpose. Because when you've got everything you wanted, and then you think that this is the thing that's remaining beyond the physical and the tangible stuff, that's really what your purpose and calling is. And if you imagine that, then if you work towards that before you've even achieved everything materialistically, you're working for a purpose, isn't it? So
I think as human beings, we're just not designed to be without purpose. How many people do you see when, I don't know, I'm not going to say win the lottery, bad example, but generally when they go into retirement or they lose their job or they hit a certain age, and the health declines, the mental health declines, because that career, that job, that income, that whatever they did with their time was their purpose. What's the saying? There's a saying that life is what happens when, I can't think of the saying now, but it's coming to my mind. But
I think I know which one you mean. I can't remember either.
Life
Cool,
life happens for you, or something similar to that. And there is something about, life stops when you stop thinking, or when you stop having a goal or a purpose.
Cool. You went through a change yourself, didn't you? Because you were in the police force as a senior officer for many years, and come to think of the question, what do you work for? What made you go into that particular type of career? What were your thoughts of what you were working for at the time, and how has that transition into what you're doing now, if it's changed, how has it changed?
That's a really cool question.
Thank you.
See,
I'm a cool guy.
Yeah, well, you are. I mean, you've got a cool beard, to be honest. Can we just do that mustache thing?
One second. There we go.
I think to imagine earlier on, try to grow that over lockdown, but my wife wouldn't let me. So let me right back again. I think that's a really good question, and I think your purpose can change as you experience life, going forward. Because we all have different experiences in life, and they begin to shape who we are. I think the one constant that we have in life are the values that we hold, the very core of who we are. I call it the moral compass of who we are. What do you stand for in this world? What makes you happy? What makes you sad? What makes you glad, or what makes you angry? What makes you take this decision as opposed to that decision? What makes you break away from the crowd to go in this direction when everyone else is going in this direction? Those are your core values. And I work with some very, very senior leaders across so many companies now. And one of the constant questions I always ask these senior leaders is, what are your purpose? What are your core purposes? Your core values. and they will inevitably look at some wall and they'll spout off the values written on that wall of that company, and I'll say, well, no, they're not. They're borrowed values. They're the values of your organization. They're not your individual values. And I think we all need to go on this journey where we understand our values. And it's once we've understood our values, what I, Kul Mahay, stand for, then I can have a better understanding of what my purpose in life is going to be. I think the purpose follows the values. So for me, I don't think my values have changed from when I was a 10-year-old sniveling kid in Wolverhampton, where I was born and bred, to who I am right now. I always want to care for other people. I always want to do the right thing. I want to be a part of the change of society and those people around. I want to have a positive impact, a positive ripple effect wherever I go. I want to express and espouse love wherever I go, and I want to make a change. I want to bring about change, a positive change. So those are like my fundamental values that have always driven me, and it was these values that drove me towards becoming a police officer. From the age of 10, my number one, my only role in life as I saw it was to be a police officer. That's all I ever wanted, and yet I was born one of 7 children with the typical East is kind of dad. Sit us down on the bed settee. You remember the bed settees, the big long bed settees that everyone used to have?
Yeah.
We had a couple of those, and
have you got any one-liners you want to share from your dad? Actually, keep them clean.
I want you to be a doctor. That's what he used to do every single Sunday. Same thing. I want you to be a doctor. And if he felt that he wanted to talk a bit more, he just add to that and say, but if you can't be a doctor, be a dentist. At least be a dentist. If you can't be a dentist, then be a lawyer.
Just be a lawyer. It's fine. Doesn't matter.
No big deal.
And it's no surprise that I've got 2 brothers who are doctors. One brother got excited; he's a doctor and a lawyer.
Oh wow!
My sisters are nurses. One sister became a teacher. One brother became a layabout. So he really bucked the trend.
Was that you?
No, me. Well, it depends on how you see the police. But I was going to be a police officer, and it became my number one passion. And as soon as I was able to apply at the age of 15 3/4. In those days, pretty much every single police force had full-time police cadets, and there were 43 police forces. I applied to 26 and I got rejected 26 times. And when you have a passion, then with that passion comes something else. It's called resilience. You never give up. You keep going and you keep going and you keep going. And I think a lot of people have struggled with resilience over the past year with COVID-19. And it's when you don't have a passion for what you're doing, in answer to the question of what do you work for, when you don't have that, then you also don't have resilience, or your resilience levels are going to be lower. So it's very important. The question that you ask is a very important question, because everybody needs to know, why am I getting out of bed today? Why am I putting my shoes and socks on? Why am I walking towards this particular office or doing this particular task? Why am I doing that? Why am I having to do these tasks? Why am I suddenly becoming more intentional about the way that I'm doing things? And when you understand that, then you also have resilience, because the one inevitability about life is that there's going to be challenges. We know this. Every single person who's lived a life will have lived through challenges. Now, some people give up early. Some people might go that bit further and then give up. Some people just power through because they have that dogged belief in what they're doing, and they refuse to give up. And that was me. It took me 27 times before I joined the police service. And even when I joined the police service, my learning wasn't over. I joined the year before the miners' strike, and I was literally like a brown speck in a sea of white. And, I joined Derbyshire Police. It was a strong mining community everywhere I went. It was the year before the miners' strike. Racism was rife. Sexism was rife. Ignorance was rife. Some were merely confused. Some were curious. But some didn't like the fact that I was there. And I think that came from fear of ignorance, and fear, not through hatred, but fear of the unknown more than anything else. I think that's where that racism comes from. I think sometimes
I would say a lot of that still is rife. Would you not agree?
Yeah, I think to some degree it is. you know what? We only have to look at some of the recent events in the world to know that that's still there. And
Definitely, yeah.
after the BLM protests, I was having debates with my former colleagues, people who I thought got it. And some of the comments that they were making, the ignorant comments that they were making, they shocked me. So it's still there. It's still there to some degree. But what I'm saying is, it's more of an unconscious bias thing or a white privilege thing, as opposed to out and out hatred and racism. It's not conscious racism. It's an unconscious racism.
Yeah, that's probably the worst kind. Kul, you speak to people on a daily basis. I mean, I want to say this is what you do for a living or this is your line of work, but you might not even call it work, because it's your passion. And here's us Beardos, we pop up, we'll talk about it for an hour and, it'll be at the back of our minds again. When you speak to people about what do they work for, what are they working towards, what's their goals, their aspirations, how many people are not able to think past maybe providing for their kids or buying a car, paying for a holiday? How many people, on a sort of rough percentage wise, have a bigger picture, like working towards world peace or, uniting communities, colours, creeds?
The unfortunate response to that is that the vast majority of people that I speak to actually do go to earn money, money for their children, to keep their families. And I have no qualms with that, to be honest. But the line of work that they choose, because the people that I work for tend to be in certain jobs. I do a lot of work at the police service, and in the police service you see that as more of a vocation than anything else. So yes, of course they're going out to earn money, but there's a deeper meaning behind joining the police service, the fire service, and military. I'm doing a lot of work with the military at the moment. I'm doing a lot of work with universities at the moment, and the leaders within universities. They want to create a fair and equitable learning environment for the futures of the world. So people have two levels. They want to earn the money because they need to look after their families, but they also have a vocational belief somewhere within there as well. Some of the private clients that I work with, and I work with less and less private clients now. More of my clients are now corporate clients, to be honest, but more of the private clients are genuinely confused, and inevitably, the leaders that come to me, who come to me privately, come to me because they feel confused and they don't know. They have these searching questions within their own mind. So I help them to discover why they've got this confusion in their head, and as a consequence of that, we then arrive at the answers as to why they do what they do and what they get up in the morning for. And what the depth of passion is.
I feel like I have to put my hand up to ask you a question, because Ali's in there as well, is thinking he's got a question. You know what? I'm going to ask you a question which I think it would have been more of an Ali kind of a question, since he's the controversial one. You mentioned you do work in the public sector, the police, the forces and stuff like that. I'm just a question which popped into my mind. Have you ever come across people who, let's just say, they're working for the country and their beliefs, for example, let's just say, when you've got the military arm of the country, and then you've got people who are here to serve and protect the country, but their own personal beliefs may conflict with the nation's or the state's agenda or idea or work. And there's then the dichotomy of beliefs going on in their mind and their hearts. Do you get people ever like that? Thinking that I'm here, I love my country, I'm here to serve and protect my country, but on this particular issue, or what the country has as a stance towards this particular country, I don't agree with. Like, let's just say, even in cross country or multinational type of conflicts, even they don't agree with.
War? You mean like war or invading another country or something?
Yeah, invasions of, that's the extreme level, but there could be something more softer things. But do you get people who have this kind of dichotomy or this kind of confusion within themselves, and because then they're thinking to themselves, what I work for is to protect, this is my purpose, my calling is to earn money for my family, but is to protect my nation, my much loved country. But hang on, there's some conflict here with my personal beliefs on this.
Yeah, No, it's a great question. I've only recently started working with the military. I've just recently launched a social enterprise called Try Potential, and one of the reasons that we've created this social enterprise is, again, it's because it's a big why for me. My journey within the police service saw me experiencing racism. And as a consequence of that, I was one of the founders of the Black Police Association movement, which then spread to other forces. And I became the first vice president of the National Black Police Association, which then allowed me to work at governmental level, Home Secretary level, to create policies for all police forces to follow too, so that we could have more and more represented police forces up and down the country, so that we could change the culture of the police forces, so that they could deliver a better service to the disparate communities that we have around the UK. So here we are, 30 years later, and police forces still are struggling to get the kind of numbers in that represent the kind of numbers that we've got in society, and also to get them promoted up to the senior levels of the organisation. And I'm so frustrated that we're still here. And I know the police service wants to do this, but for some reason it's not working. It's not working to the extent or the pace that it should do. So that's why we created High Potential. One of the things that we recognise is this is not just the police service. This is the military. It's the same in the military. It's the same in the fire service. It's the same in all the critical uniform services. And also, there's transferability of skills across all of those services as well. So Try Potential is all about increasing recruitment within the police service and military and all the uniformed services. We're also helping the new and existing BAME staff that come in to aspire and get the leadership skills to become the leaders of the future, and also then to be able to transfer between one service to another. So the consequence of that, it's a long-winded way of me answering your question, really. Sorry, Majid. I've ended up talking a lot to the military, and one thing that I have found that's quite refreshing about people within the military is that these are all good people. I have not met a single person from within the military that has not impressed upon me a real depth as a human being. They're not, those that I've spoken to are not some robotic sort of uniformed personnel that just does what they're told to do. Of course, there's discipline within the military, but what I have found is that they have a real strong sense of purpose as a human being. And we talked about a goal is not just about earning money, it's about so much else, and they have had a much more deeper kind of thinking and understanding of why they're doing what they're doing and what it means to them, what it means to not just for the country but for world peace or unity across the UK.
On that note though, Kul, sorry, you were saying, carry on.
No, I'm just saying that has impressed upon me, and with the work that we're going to do with Try Potential, we want to extend upon that, because one of the pieces of work that I do now within pretty much any organization that I work with is help develop and create emotionally intelligent cultures. And I say that if you are emotionally intelligent, then things like diversity, inclusion don't actually matter anymore, because as an emotionally intelligent leader, you should be at the very top of your game. You should be a great leader for everybody.
Agree.
So that's what I try to do now. I create emotionally intelligent culture. So I'm hoping that with the work that we're doing, we can also help reshape the cultures of the military, the police, the fire service, and prison service, and so forth, and so on.
Now, just a question on that, really, is seeing as we've touched on the topic of, military, police services, just basically authorities and laws and stuff. Do you think part of the struggle of getting people from the BAME community to join and work under that banner or for that force is, look, they're not working for just money? I think so. I think that's probably the case for most people. But on the flip side, if you've got somebody who's like British through and through, for generations, they're white, yeah, they're easier to. It's easier to get them to work for, let's say, the army, yeah, to fight for the Queen or Queen and country, or wear that uniform. I think part of the struggle, and you probably know better than me on this, is getting Asians and people from other minorities to work under that arm of the law or whatever is the fact that they just
because of the history.
The history and the fact that they have more of a conscience. They don't believe in the values of, you know, invading this country, that country, this country, and also they don't agree with police tactics, the brutalities, the biases, the discrepancies, everything else. And I think it's not addressed, not by the army, not by the police, not anything, is because if you really ask these people, what do you work for? What do you work towards? You know, if you look at the BAME communities, they're not nationalistic as such. They're not, blind following might be a little bit unfair because I'm not saying white people are blind followers or whatever, but there is a certain sense of nationalism, patriotism, just pride, those things. And that's why it's easier to get white people enlisted into the army, go and invade another country without asking too many questions, see this and the other, you know. But with the BAME community, for some reason,
I think that's partially because the BAME community, because traditionally we're a migrant community, right?
Yeah,
we
definitely.
are descendants of migrants, so our roots aren't distinguishable just within this country, but we also have some of our roots scattered in other parts of the continent. So there's a proximity there.
This is it.
In terms of emotional proximity.
I actually think there are 2 or 3 issues here for me. One of them is that in order for us as a society, in order for us to attract more people of all colours, not just BAME community, because that's, for me, that's what I call demographic diversity. So you're saying that person is different because they've got a different colour skin, or they worship a different religion, or they have got a different gender. That's all demographic diversity. And I don't want to get too hung up on demographic diversity. I think the important thing is to have cognitive diversity, where everybody is allowed and actually encouraged to think differently. So let me just explain what I mean. I've known plenty of brown or black faces have got to senior levels in an organization, but then have just been exactly like their white colleagues. They talk like them, they walk like them, they think like them. And I always say, well, what's the value of that then? What was the point of getting a brown or black face or
Good
a woman
question.
to that position if they're just going to behave like everybody else?
That's
a simulation. That defeats the object of the exercise. The reason why I want to have representation, and the reason why we do the work that we do with Try Potential and with the work that I do in Ignite Your Inner Potential with organizations, is I want people to be able to celebrate who they are, where they come from, the difference of thought that they have, the cultural differences that they have. So ultimately where I want to be is that we have senior officers within the army, the police, the prison service, and so forth and so on, NHS, wherever it might be, where people are still proud to be a Muslim. People are still
it's not just a label that you've become a lieutenant or a colonel or something. Exactly. You see the Muslim who's still praying in the army or in the senior position. You still see the Sikh with the pagadi on. We see the Hindus with the tikka on. All these things.
And nobody should bat an eyelid. That's the key thing. So that's what we need to create, culture where nobody bats an eyelid about that. They're saying, yeah, fine. It's a bit like Rishi Sunak.
That's true. That's tree freedom, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
But isn't that an issue in itself, though?
What?
If you encourage Muslims or Sikhs or whoever, right, to take up arms for Queen and country, now most of these religions are against this whole notion of nationalism. Yeah, for a Muslim to fight for anything other than, his faith or his God, etc., is completely prohibited. Now,
sure.
Where, here's the Queen, she would come out and say, do you know what, it's okay, be a Muslim, forget about the fact that Islam teaches you to shun nationalism, but you know what, we're still going to show you as a Muslim, but you're just not a good Muslim on that side. Be this kind of, half Muslim type, and just go away from liberal Muslim, and then that's what's promoted as right. And the thing is, it does come back to the question of what do you work for, who do you work for, why do you do it, what's your goal, but it's a tricky one, because you're having to ask these people to kind of water down who they are, what they are, in order to get what you need out of them.
I get
That's
what,
a
I get,
massive
The
issue.
only thing I would say to that is, let's look at the home countries, if you like, of any person of any race. So, Hindus, India, Sikhs, India, Muslims, Pakistan, Abu Dhabi, UAE, Saudi Arabia, wherever. Every one of those countries will have an army.
Mm.
Every one of those armies will have people of that culture within there. And I think the key thing here, so you'll always have Muslim soldiers or Sikh soldiers or Hindu soldiers, and the other thing I think is being a soldier is not just about going out there fighting, because more and more as the world has moved on, more and more we see the army less involved in conflict and more involved in, doing things within their own country. For example, all the hard work that the army has done, the military has done in terms of testing for coronavirus and helping out in the infrastructure and building the hospital and all this kind of stuff, and that's becoming a more of a role for the military nowadays, because warfare has changed. Warfare is no longer about going out there with guns. Warfare.
Yeah, careful, Kul. You might get some of these conspiracy theorists saying that the coronavirus is a part of the warfare.
It's warfare. Yeah.
But people will be saying that, So warfare,
Biological warfare.
Warfare, that we have these kind of
Yeah.
things, and cyber hacking and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
That we news. I think, Ali,
That WhatsApp.
Oh yeah.
Privacy hacking.
like that mobile phone company like Hawaii or whatever it's called.
Huawei, yeah,
Huawei,
exactly, yeah.
Everyone thinks it's a bit dodgy. Well, I'm not sure it is, but
It's just a different kind of dodgy, isn't it? It's just
It's not-
that's
it's
a
not-
different. That's
it's not
not the
the same-
cyber warfare.
It's
like
not-
saying
it's not US
America
dodgy,
can have
yeah.
our data,
Yeah.
but the second China or Russia want our data, no,
Then
that's
that's
a
illegal.
big no.
Yeah.
but this is a
Just another one though. I mean, if you have somebody comes to you, I come to you, for example, right? And let's say I'm a little confused, which we all know I am. But if
most
I
of the
come
time.
to you and say, "Look, Kul, I'm nearly 28 years old,
Yeah, of course you are.
and I've come straight out of school. I've gone into a job. I'm just working to live, basically, and I'm working for a living so much so that I'm forgetting life. Like life is passing me by. Now, my purpose of life can't just be to work and pay bills. Give me something. Like, what am I doing wrong? I've got to work. I've got to have a living, but surely that's not all I work for, is it?
I think one of the first things that I would certainly be asking you to do is measure your level of happiness. Where are you? If you're telling me that you're working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, and then I say, well, how happy are you? And, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you? How happy is your life? And you say, well, it's a 9. Well, then you haven't got an issue. But if
Do what you're doing, yeah.
if you're closer to a 1 or a 2, then we seriously need to do some thinking, don't we? And I guess one of the first things I would ask you to do, Ali, is really become much more self-aware. Understand who you are. And I would always start with understanding your values. Do you know what your values are? Do you know what your moral compass is? Do you know what makes you causes you to make this decision as opposed to that decision? What are your beliefs that you hold? And so we would start unpacking all of this before we can start repacking it in a much more
Personalized.
aware kind of way.
Yeah.
A much more intentional kind of way, as we were talking about at the start. And then I think the answers, and what I've found with my clients as I've started working through the day with them, and as Majid says, I call myself the immersion coach because everything that I do has to be immersive. I have to take people through a very intense experience, whether it's my corporate training or the one-to-one coaching. So I tend to do full day coaching sessions. It's exhausting for me and for the client, but by the end of the day, every single one of my clients that I've had so far is a completely different person to the one that walked into the room at 9 o'clock in the morning, because we've collectively, both of us have been on that journey together to unpack, repack, unpack, and then repack, and then to create some kind of an awareness as to what their ultimate goals might be that they want to aspire towards, and then to create some kind of a journey, a roadmap as to how they're going to get there.
Cool. In addition to obviously going through those kinds of an assessment and assessing and working out on a scale how happy you are, working out what your values are, and finding your purpose in life. If we were to kind of just ask you for a brief way of how you would kind of advise someone on how to find their purpose. How would they find their purpose, in your words, in your opinion? I'm sure it's not something that we can kind of summarize into a short sentence. I appreciate that, but just as short as you can.
And I know that you appreciate that this is a complex process.
Of course, yeah, definitely.
To find the purpose. So it's not something that we can do in like a matter of.
Yeah, what are the kind of things that people should be thinking about to find their purpose?
Certainly, what they should be thinking about is look at all the moments when something makes you angry or sad, anything that makes you feel negative. Understand what that is. Start listing it down. Start writing it down on a piece of paper, and you might find that you get this, phenomenally long list that you never thought that you would have. But it's important to understand that. So this is what this is what pushes this button. Now what pushes the other button that makes me feel good? Makes me feel happy, makes me feel funny, makes me feel calm. Start understanding these emotions and naming the emotions. Start thinking about the emotions that you go through every single day. So starting tomorrow, walk around with a pen and paper in your hand, and every single emotion that comes into your head, write that emotion down. Then do the exercise. Well, what was it that caused me to behave like that, to feel that emotion, that emotion, this emotion? So then you look at all the positive emotions, and you look at the tasks under the positive emotions that have made you feel good, and look for the commonalities. And from those commonalities, you might actually start forming some tension. And then you are on a pathway towards understanding what your purpose is. Because your purpose is going to make you feel good.
Yeah, and I would just kind of add to that. Do you remember when I was delivering the speech on success on your own terms, how to find success on your own terms, and you came to that event? And I remember Mike Gardner being there as well. What a guy. And at the time, one of the things that I would just add to what you just said, which I 100% agree, is all that is the important stuff, and all that needs to be built on a foundation, and those foundations are our own values, as you mentioned right at the beginning. So when you know what your values are, something which makes you feel happy at a time may not be good for you, it could be something dangerous for you, but a temporary form of happiness which doesn't fit your values is not going to be something that we want to kind of continue doing. So again, values, purpose are the framework around which we build all of these other points which make us happy, sad, angry, and all these emotions attached to these things. But yeah, definitely, this is deep stuff, and appreciate this is something that would take more than an hour's podcast to kind of discuss properly. But
if I could just share one very quick model with people that they can take away. Now, again, I have a 6-7 day program just on this model around emotional intelligence. But if I can just share the very basics of it, then people might understand the journey that they need to take. So emotional intelligence has been around since the mid 80s, and I'm a firm believer that if you totally and utterly practice all the 26 competency areas of emotional intelligence, then all the things like inspirational leadership, like diversity and inclusion, like how you talk to people and your stakeholders, your clients, and all of that fades into the background because it becomes your norm, and you'll be your very best. So emotional intelligence is based around 4 key quadrants. One side is all about you, and the other side is all about other people. So the side, we always have to start with ourselves, because if you're going to be a leader of anybody else, you have to first become a leader of yourself. Because with great responsibility, great authority comes great responsibility, as the saying goes. So the first element of that is to become much more aware, to wake up, essentially, to come out to this hypnotic life that we live, where we're getting up at the same time every single morning, eat the same breakfast, drive to the same office, do the same work, come back, probably have the same kind of evening, and go to bed at the same night, same time every single day. And one day blurs into the other day. So we're living this life that we don't even really truly appreciate. So you have to become more self-aware. And part of being self-aware is understanding what emotions do I experience every single day, and then how do those emotions affect my behavior. So do I get frustrated every single day? Then do I end up shouting at my colleagues, my wife, my children, or whatever it might be? Do I do that? And if once I'm now self-aware, now I understand my behavior, which one of my behaviors actually serves me well, and which don't serve me. And when I wrote my books, Smash the Habit, which you can see over, sorry, this shoulder here, the camera's back to front now. It's over this shoulder here. There it is there. When I wrote the book Smash the Habit, and I talk about how 17 years ago I was able to give up smoking, drinking, eating meat, fish, eggs, all on the same night. Having been a big drinker, big whiskey connoisseur, I was then drinking 4 pints a night. How I gave it up, and I've never turned back. And then 6 years ago, I gave up tea and coffee and fruit juice and fizzy drinks, and I only drink green tea, peppermint tea now. 4 years ago, I gave up milk overnight. I only drink oat or almond milk now.
Almond milk, yeah.
How was I able to do that? Well, I was able to do that because I became self-aware. I really went in on myself and thought, what serves me, what doesn't serve me, what habits are good for me, what habits are bad for me. Then I made the second commitment, the self-management. This is, people can call this the growth zone. People can call this the action plan for your life, whatever, but it's the hardest part of it all. This is where you make a commitment to change yourself. So you start managing yourself much better. This is where, if you're on a diet, you say, I'm going to stop eating chocolate. And then you manage it for 2 weeks, and then it becomes really hard. And the temptation is always there to eat more chocolate. So that's that element. But when you master those two elements, then the third element is social awareness. Social awareness is really about understanding how everything around you works, how your organization works. If you're part of a religious group, how does it really work? Who makes the decisions and how are they made? Who's in the clique and outside the clique? What are the politics in this group? Politics with a small p. Same with your community, same with your team, same with your family, whoever it might be, same with your group of friends. Once you understand that, then the fourth element is about relationship building. Right now, I get everything. I understand everything. Now, knowing all of that, I can talk to people different. I know that Majid prefers to speak in this kind of way. So I'll use Majid's kind of language and build a stronger rapport with him. I know that Ali prefers to speak in this kind of way. So I'm going to adjust my style of communication so that I can build a stronger communication rapport with Ali. So that's where relationship building comes in. Now, Majid, I don't like to go to networking events. It's not who I am. But what I am really good at is building deep, meaningful one-on-one relationships with people. And for me, relationship building is critical. I don't market my work. I don't sell my work. I don't have a sales team. But the work comes to me because of the deep relationships that I have with all of my clients, whether they're corporate or private clients. So that's one of the things that I think is very important for people.
Absolutely, I think it's a very valuable tool to ponder on for anybody with that model that you've explained, the quadrant model of emotional intelligence and finding out, exactly how to communicate with the world. And I think what's more important is we need to understand ourselves and how we communicate with ourselves for us to be then reflect that over to others.
Everything starts with us. If we want to make any external change outside of ourselves, we always end up having to inevitably come back to the same place, i.e. here. We need to understand ourselves more. No matter what age we're at, no matter how old, no matter how experienced we are, if we want to change anything else, we have to change ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool. Been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. Have you noticed that an hour went by? Does it feel like an hour? It doesn't feel like an hour, does it?
No, it doesn't. No.
But, no, it's been a fascinating conversation. I think we could quite easily carry on. I know we say that all the time, but we actually could.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts? In fact, you know what? Before you go, we're going to have to ask you, what do you work for?
What do I work for? I work to create a better society. I have seen leadership at its best. I've seen leadership at its poorest. And my commitment, having left the police service, and something that you said earlier on, Ali, about when people who've been in these kind of organizations, they suddenly retire and they've got nothing else, and they've always defined themselves with that uniform that they wore. I know plenty of people like that, who all they ever wanted to be were police officers. Once they left the police service, they've suddenly become old people. And, the same age as me, but they're old. They've got old people illnesses, etc., etc. So their mindset has become old. And I think that's sad. I think, because for me, I've got another 20, 30 years of commitment and stuff that I can give back to society. So what I want to give back, I want to help create and shape organizations that are emotionally intelligent, where people from any color, any faith, any gender can go in and feel valued and be able to contribute to that organization. Where I know that once we create those kind of organizations, then we can create those kind of societies, because those organizations will impact on societies. So that is the ripple effect that I want to create in the world.
Cool. If you're not already in politics, or you're not, standing for some kind of election or the other,
I vote for Kul.
Get on it. Yeah.
I vote for Kul.
Cool.
I don't know about you guys, but I've been following the elections over in America every single day for the past 2 or 3 months now.
Wow!
I just wish that there was.
You got some stamina.
We could send somebody from England or the UK to go and become an American president, because it's a mess over there, real mess.
Wow!
We talk about leadership,
Wow.
and Donald Trump is the most unemotionally intelligent leader I've ever seen. He genuinely is. When you compare him against all the markers of emotional intelligence.
Heck of a following, though, you have to admit.
Incredible.
Interestingly enough, I read a post, was it a tweet or somewhere, that said, you know what, if Donald Trump is now available, I'd love to if transfers were possible between presidents and whatnot, I'd love to transfer Donald Trump to Palestine, because he would be able to kind of stand his ground and really sort that shizzle out. So I mean,
I'm not entirely sure that he would, though, Ali. You see, one of the things that Donald Trump will so look at all the dictators of the past. You look at the Hitlers, the Mussolinis, the African dictators of the past. They all have one common thing, and I put Donald Trump within there. They all have one common thing. What they do to gain that level of popularity, it's a bit like the sales thing that Majid was teaching. They look for the pain points. So these pain points were already there in America. Little bit of
that's true.
Simmerings of anger there, a bit of racism over there. It was already there, but nobody was exploiting it. So all he did was exploited it.
And he's done well. Yeah.
And then he used the rhetoric. If you listen to his speeches are in a very plain, simple, almost an idiotic kind of English.
But he knows lots of words. He knows lots of words.
Well, he reaches his target audience, isn't it? That's
The language he uses is definitely.
So it's a bit like what I was saying. If I want to build a strong relationship with Majid, I'll speak his kind of language, or I'll speak your kind of language to build a rapport. That's all he's done. He's built that strong rapport. But one of the reasons why he's been successful is because of the power that America has. So you go to Palestine and try and do this in Palestine. Palestine hasn't got that power. So he probably wouldn't have that level of success in Palestine.
That's also a good point.
More debt than anything else.
So, cool. Fantastic discussion. Unfortunately, we had to finish on Trump.
Philosophy, we talked spirituality.
we had to bring it down, didn't we?
We talked religion. we talked dichotomy of faiths. We talked about emotional intelligence. And then we ended up with Donald Trump.
What a finale, eh?
Politics, eh? Cool.
I'm thinking that he's like a resurrection of Christ or something, aren't they?
Wow.
Yeah, they're probably, some of them are probably.
He's something, I tell you, he's a resurrection of something. I don't know what it is.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
I actually think he's a reborn sort of resurrection.
Messiah of some kind, yeah. Listen, Kul, we gotta wrap up now. We would love to continue this conversation. If you want to hang about in the waiting room, we'll wrap up with you afterwards. And but for now, we've got to close the show. But wow, what a fascinating conversation! For those of you who've been listening, do like, share, and subscribe, as I'm supposed to be saying as somebody on a public platform, but always keep forgetting. But guys, this was Kul Mahay. Thank you, Kul. We're just going to bring you down for a second. This was Kul Mahay joining us here on Beardos Media, which was the 12th episode of season 2, and another fantastic guest that we had. And you know what, keep them coming, I say. Ladies and gents, this is it from us for tonight. Any parting words from you, Ali?
No, that's it. We didn't ask you what you work for. How did we not ask you?
You did right at the beginning.
What do you work for?
We're
not out of time. We're going to do an extended version today.
I say we work for the intentions with which we work, which was overly simplistic.
By politicians,
overly
man.
simplistic answer. But there's a lot more that goes into that. Yes, and on that note, thanks very much once again, guys. Hope you enjoyed that, and see you on the next one. Yeah.